Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back. Okay, all you citizens of the world, welcome back to Live from the Heartland for our second segment of the week of December 21st. Once again, it's Cousin Adam's monthly sports report on the Live from the Heartland show. And in case you haven't heard me do this rap before, Cousin Adam is one of my cousins, and he played football at Northwestern, and he is a wonderful guy, pays close attention to sports. He's been active in film and worked in some Andy Davis movies along with me. And I'm always glad to have him on here because when I'm not preparing for this show or doing other things, I do spend some time watching my favorite teams like the Bears, like the White Sox, like the Bulls, etc. And today, Adam's going to give us a little bit of report. So good morning to you out there in California, Adam. Thanks for coming on. And what do you got to tell us about today?
Well, good morning. Good morning to you and to everybody in the Heartland. It's great to be here as always. Yes, this is an exciting time of the year for sports fans. There's so much going on. Right now, we're in the heart of the football season, but also the basketball and the hockey seasons are in their key times of the year as well. And then for those who love strategizing and thinking about the off season and all the moves that happen, this is obviously a big time for baseball. Baseball is having their free agency, some big trades happening, so a lot of movement happening. So overall, this is a really fun time for people to settle in, watch some great sports, and enjoy the amazing entertainment that comes from our athletic endeavors in this country and across the world.
One of the things that's on the news all the time, if you're watching sports, is the college playoffs.
Yes.
And they used to have a number of bowl games, and there was always a lot of debate about what team was the best. And now they think some sort of a system that really decides who would be the true champion of the year. And it used to be a few teams. They've expanded it. Why don't you fill us in on the college playoff picture, what to expect, what to be looking for, even what to hope for?
Well, yes. So college football regular season has come to the end, and now it's in the postseason. And traditionally, college football has had an amazing bowl system where there's a number of these major bowl groups, these committees, these locations across the country, like, for example, Pasadena, California, and their Rose Parade and their Rose Bowl. And they will have these contracts with major conferences. And so for a century and a half, these major bowls dominated the entire postseason of college football. You'd frequently have two teams at the end of the year, both winning their big bowl game, like the winner of the Rose Bowl, Michigan, one year, and the winner of the Orange Bowl down in Florida one year, Nebraska. Both had great seasons, both finished by winning their major bowl. And then it was up to the writers and the coaches to kind of vote to determine who they thought was the national champion. And this was the system for a long time. And it worked great for the money-making process because the bowls did really well and the schools did well. But the fans were feeling like there was a missed opportunity there, and the players as well, wanting to compete with the best and win a true championship. So over the last 20, 25 years, there's been a move towards a playoff. It started with what they called the Bowl Championship Series, a single game, and then a four-team finalist semifinals, and then a final championship game. That was still leaving people very unsatisfied, as some really good teams were left out. So this is the first year. This is the year that for the very first time, there's a 12-team playoff. Now, of course, there's a little controversial. There was a team, a multiple national championship team, the University of Alabama Crimson Tide, who did not make the top 12. They were just left out. And so some people were upset about that. But there's always going to be a few teams feeling like they got left out. Most people agree this is a really exciting new bowl system.
Who's in it? Who are we looking at? Who's on the rise? Who's on the fade? What do we got?
Well, the way the system works is they have some guaranteed spots for conference championships. So the conference champions of the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, they're all in. And they also have kind of an at-large bid where they choose teams based on their performance overall in the season, a committee. And that's where that controversy happened with this University of Alabama team. They didn't get in, and instead the team that came in second in the ACC, the Atlantic Coast Conference, they got in. So it does lead to some exciting matchups. So the team that got in over Alabama is a really interesting team, not only for this season, but historically. And it's the Southern Methodist University Mustangs. SMU has been a dominant football team back in the early 1900s, mid 1900s. Doak Walker, some tremendous football players out of SMU. And then Eric Dickerson and Craig James and the Pony Express in the 1980s. And that's where some controversy happened. There were a bunch of major donors, some fans of the SMU football team who were giving money directly to these players. And when that was discovered, you might remember this, Mike, they did
I'm old enough.
Yeah, they did what they called the death penalty. They literally shut down the entire football program at SMU. Remember that?
I do.
Yes.
Well, I don't know if I remember it from when it happened or from hearing about it in discussion.
So the entire football program was completely shut down. They waited, I think, maybe 20 years, 15 years before they were allowed to have a football program again. They brought it back at a Division II level. But and one of the coaches that I played under in high school, who is one of the great offensive coaches in the country, he was part of the coaching staff that came in and was part of SMU's revitalization. His name is Coach Dan Morrison. He was with June Jones's program there at SMU and then back at Hawaii. And he was just retired from the University of Hawaii's program under Timmy Chang. But with SMU, they have built up this team. And this year, they had this magical year. They got into the ACC and they almost won the entire thing. They won the regular season best record. And they came in second in their bowl game against Clemson. So SMU will be playing at Penn State. That's one of the early games. Another one of the early games is that Clemson team that beat SMU for the AC championship. They will be playing against Texas. And then another really great game is going to be Ohio State hosting the University of Tennessee on Saturday night. So when people are watching this, they'll probably already be happening or have happened. So I hope that you enjoyed the game if you watched it. And if you haven't.
What teams are in from the Big Ten besides Ohio State and Penn State? Any others?
Yes, indeed. So the winner of the Big Ten Conference is that new team from the West Coast, the University of Oregon.
Right.
The Fighting Ducks. Yes. So they have won the Big Ten championship and they're sitting pretty. They got a bye in the first round and they're going to be playing in the Rose Bowl against the winner of the Ohio State Tennessee game. The other two teams in the first round of the playoffs, Mike, are the University of Indiana.
All right. They went
University.
8-0 for a while there.
That's right. I got that mixed up. Oh, my Indiana fans wearing red, but they would be mad at me. So it's Indiana University, IU, and they're playing Notre Dame. So that's actually a really interesting game. That's on Friday night. So for those of you who are watching this segment on Thursday or Friday, check out that game.
Friday, the end of this week?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, this goes live Friday morning on YouTube and Lumpen Radio. Other places on Saturday. But if anyone's listening on Friday morning, you can watch that game.
Yes, and that's a really interesting one because Indiana, of course, is where the University of Notre Dame is located. And so the players and the students who have gone to IU all these years, of course, they are really great in basketball, but they've always been kind of the second little brother to Notre Dame in football in that state. And now is their chance to, cap this really amazing season with a win there. That would be great.
Well, Adam, James, don't we have NFL playoffs coming up in the not so far off? Where are we at in the NFL? I mean, I've been watching some games and, I kind of like the Northern Conference or whatever with, Minnesota and Detroit and even the Bears, Yes. But both Minnesota and Detroit have winning, same record, I think 11-2 or something. Correct. And, people are jockeying for who's in first place and talked about the most. Talk about the NFL playoffs coming up in the rest of the season, and even give us some highlights about certain players who've emerged or certain players who've shot themselves in the foot.
It's been an amazing season so far. Some interesting things have been developing. And yes, you're absolutely right. The NFC North has been one of the best divisions, if not the best division in football. You've got the Detroit Lions, the Minnesota Vikings, the Green Bay Packers, all playing really lights out football. All are going to be in the playoffs, and all are going to have a good chance to actually run the table and win the championship. And the Chicago Bears, although they are not in that 3 and they're not going to be in the playoffs, they're actually positioning themselves really well for a great future. This has been a tough season for them. As you know, as Bears fans out there, they fired their coach, which is the first time the Bears have ever fired a coach in midseason. And it's really unfortunate. I really like that coach. He's a really good defensive coach, coordinator, coach with the players. He just was in a tough spot with the Bears. A lot of these teams that are rebuilding struggle. They make mistakes. It's hard to roll through those. He didn't. And so now he's gone. So it's unfortunate, but I think the Bears are going to get a great coach next round and have a really good future ahead of them. It is a tough division, though, because the Lions look dominant, but they've been having a lot of injuries. And as a result, the Vikings have now tied them for the best record. And there is a final game at the end of the season, Lions and Vikings. That has a chance to be for that division championship. Some individual players have been standing out right now. At this time of year, people start talking about the MVP. And some of the people that have stood out are these two amazing running backs, Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley. Henry was a longtime player for the Tennessee Titans who did not get a new contract. So now he's with the Baltimore Ravens and has been doing a spectacular job this year. The other running back, Saquon Barkley, had gone from the Giants to the Eagles, and he's possibly going to break the NFL record for a single season rushing this year. Could happen.
Who has the record now? Does that Walter Payton?
Emmitt Smith actually has now passed and set that record, and that's the all-time record.
I was also curious to know about other teams like the Philadelphia Eagles, and out on the West Coast, like the Rams seem to be coming on a little bit. So fill us in on who set that record and then your take on some other teams.
Yeah, so Saquon Barkley is having this amazing season, and it looks like he might even break the all-time rushing record for a single season, which was set by Eric Dickerson, 2,105 yards. And so that's an amazing season as well. But despite Henry and Barkley's great seasons, there's these two quarterbacks that actually one of them's probably going to win the MVP. One is Lamar Jackson from the Baltimore Ravens, and the other is this quarterback for the Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen, who's been running and passing for touchdowns and even catching a touchdown in one of the recent games. Yes, and on the West Coast, a lot of interesting games and activity there with the the NFC Western Conference, also like the NFC North, very jam-packed with a lot of teams. But the team that everybody was expecting to be at the top is not, and that's the San Francisco 49ers. Most people had them winning that division and possibly going to the Super Bowl again, but they have been struggling with injuries, a lot of difficulties there. They had an interesting situation occur last week where one of the players late in the game was told, okay, go in, and he refused. Did you hear about that story, Mike?
I did hear about it, and I'm waiting to hear what you have to say about it. I mean, the guy was clearly PO'd. He felt like he got used and then abused. I'm not sure what side to take, but it is rough when a player says, I'm not going in.
Yes. Yeah. And, NFL and football and sports in general can be really a grind on a human soul or your body. So we understand and we stand with the players almost always. This is a tough one, though, because he wasn't standing with his teammates. And that's where I look. I read a lot of the commentary from some of the teammates. They were really disappointed. It's kind of a selfish move. Of course, as Chicago fans, we all remember the moment that happened with Scottie Pippen when Michael Jordan had retired. And Scottie felt that he should be the new focus of everything on that team. And late in the game, Phil Jackson called a timeout and drew up a play. And he wanted the player, Tony Kukoc, to take the shot because he had a really good outside shot and was on fire late in that game. And Pippen refused to go in. You remember that, Mike? Remember that story?
I do remember it. Yeah. And Scottie was, I really fell in love with the Bulls even more after Michael Jordan had left. And I liked Scottie a lot. I am not a big fan of Scottie's behavior in more recent years.
I understand. Yes. Yes. And I think, but looking back at that moment, one of the things that I remember about it more than anything was the reaction by a man named Bill Cartwright. Bill Cartwright was one of the great Chicago Bull players, a tremendous man and player. And he handled it really well. I remember because he was a leader, and he afterwards talked with the press, talked with his teammates, and he said, we're going to grow through this. We're as a team, we're going to get better from this. That was a selfish moment, and he knows it. And now we're all going to be more aware and moving forward. And I really respected that. And that to me is one of the great things about sports, is it puts us in some tough situations, and sometimes our decisions aren't right. And if we have teammates that stand with us, who bring our feet to the fire, make us stand and look at what we just did, talk about it, and then correct it and not demonize us for it, I think that's a really good thing, not only in sports, but in life.
Let's shift a little bit to baseball, and then we'll do basketball. Then we'll do our New Year's resolutions, fitness and health.
Awesome.
We may have to jam a lot in these last few minutes, but the White Sox have changed the name of the field to Rate Field. And I just saw that today. We're recording a couple days ahead of when the show airs, and I will never call it Rate Field. I call it Sox Park. I miss Comiskey Park, the vibes that were there. It was wonderful. Not a big fan of the new park, but I don't hate it as much as some people. And I'm just going to call it Sox Park. Now, we noticed here in Chicago, the White Sox yesterday traded for Cubs catcher Matt Thaiss, Thaiss. I don't know much about him. And they traded away to the Red Sox our pitcher, Garrett Crochet. And as much as I like Roche, he said he felt relief. And he's probably right in saying that, but I was hoping he would say, I had a great time there, even though we lost all those games. But your take on any of this and other baseball stuff real quickly, Adam?
Yes, well, this is the fun time of the year in many ways as baseball fans, because we can dream. We can have those thoughts of what can be and the possibilities of the baseball season. So as White Sox fans, this is the time to really, think about those possibilities, embrace them, because they're probably not going to happen too much as the season starts. Just kidding. No, really, I do like what the White Sox are doing. It's a tough haul, but they're going to try their best to rebuild this program. The Cubs also are in a similar situation, although they have a lot of pieces there in place and could have a great season ahead of them. They just traded Cody Bellinger to the Yankees, trying to move some pieces around, try to make themselves a better team for the future. Speaking of baseball and the Yankees, that was one of the big stories in the sporting world, was the fact that this great player, Juan Soto, spurred the Yankees and chose to go with that crosstown rival, the New York Mets. A lot of people in the sporting world are fascinated by the story because of the amount of money that's being guaranteed to this player.
Is it the biggest contract ever now?
Correct. The biggest one ever in the history of sports, just passing Shohei Ohtani's all-time record contract from last year. But get ready, folks. Bigger contracts are coming. This is just the nature of this sport. It's capitalism. It's supply and demand. There's only so many human beings on this planet that can hit a 100-mile-an-hour baseball, and those kind of guys are going to get hundreds of millions of dollars. So, and that's just supply and demand. So Juan Soto is a special player. Wishing him the best. Yankees fans and the Yankees organization have already pivoted and are putting a lot of that money towards other big splash players. So this is going to be an interesting baseball season next year. Despite all those moves by the Chicago and New York teams, the favorite probably is going to still be the Los Angeles Dodgers coming back. And the interesting story there will be Shohei Ohtani, this year's MVP, the 50-50 man. He will be pitching again as his arm is healing, and he is expected to be back on the mound every fifth game and throwing 100-mile-an-hour pitches at you. So he'll crack him out of the ballpark behind the plate when he's at bat, and he's going to throw him right past you when he's pitching.
Okay, now on the basketball front, it is indoors, and it's you play it when it's kind of warm in the gym. There's a lot going on, and one of the things that I like to start off with is Caitlin Clark, who really emerged as quite a pivotal figure in bringing women's sports to attention, and is, wonderful in so many ways. She responded after Megyn Kelly attacked her on comments regarding white privilege as fake. Can you fill us in on that story a little bit? Because it sounds like Caitlin Clark is the good person here, and Megyn Kelly, who kind of leans Trumpish big time, it's not so good. What do you got on it? Can you clarify it for us?
Well, yes, as many people know, and certainly those who are regulars with Live from the Heartland, there is a intellectual concept that there is racism in our country. At a high level in the education system, they teach it under the name critical race theory. And this has become a flashpoint for a lot of right-wing people who they feel that it demonizes white people specifically. It makes this concept that there are white people out there that hate, and that hate is intertwined in our country. But our country is great, and that should not be the case. That is not the case, is the argument. But it's clearly there. It's clearly been there. I believe that our government institutions, by concept, are void of that, but we're filled with people, and people sometimes carry those things in. So the idea of white privilege And certainly in the sporting world, certainly with an athlete like Caitlin Clark, who's a very, very good basketball player, if not one of the best. But she's getting a tremendous amount of attention, much more so than other players who may be better right now. And so that's where this white privileged argument comes up. I really appreciated Caitlin's response to it because, as I said to you when you texted me, I said, she gets it. She knows that she's getting a lot of extra attention. And yet she doesn't take it as this is a bad thing and I need to push it away. But she also doesn't take it like, I deserve all this because I'm just such a great player. She gets it. She understands why she's getting that extra attention and she's going to use it. That's what I really appreciate about it. If you watch her actions and you hear her words, she's aware and she's taking steps to try to create more opportunities for others and supporting her teammates and supporting this sport, because the sport is what's putting her in a positive position. She sees that. I do believe that. And why I say that is because I see her actions. So I think she's a really tremendous player. I also will segue that into the conversation about her being named the Time Magazine's Female Athlete of the Year. And one of the executives for another WNBA team made a statement saying she felt that it should have been all the players, not just singling out that one player. And while I appreciate that sentiment, I don't agree. I feel that if you look back at a year ago at the WNBA, it wasn't nearly as filled with attention, money, and new growth opportunities that it is now that this one player has arrived. And white privilege or not, that's just the reality of it. That's the economy of it. And so I think that people should recognize it, embrace it, try to create some guardrails to move it in the right direction, but certainly not be ignorant to the fact that it's there.
I would bet that Caitlin Clark goes on to really be about unity of all people. She seems like a really positive person, and we need more of those people in positions of leadership, examples for others.
Let me just give one last little tidbit on her and that journey, because what happened last summer with the Olympics, the women's Olympic basketball team, she was left off. And there was a lot of controversy. A lot of people felt that she should have been on, mostly because she's just so popular. One of the arguments was it was going to elevate that team's attention, which would elevate the overall women's basketball game all over the world. And Caitlin was left off and she was hurt about it. She's talked about it in some interviews recently, but she also was very candid that she felt that she didn't earn it, that there were other players who deserved it above her. And she recognized that they did deserve it. And one of those is the great Taurasi, the basketball player from the Phoenix team, who is one of the greatest players in the history of the game. And she's a senior player now. I mean, she's not a senior, but she's a more mature basketball player at this point in her career. Yes, over 40. And she was on the Olympic team and she won another gold. And I think it was her fourth time. And just unbelievable story. That's the person that Caitlin would have bumped. So most likely. So I think it was great that Caitlin recognized her place in this process, that others have gone before her. Let them have their attention. Her time is coming.
Okay, Adam, real quickly, at the end of each of your monthly chats with me, we talk about fitness and diet. So people are making New Year's resolutions. They're getting ready for cold winter up here. They're going to try and work out and eat better. What do you got to share?
Yes, indeed. Well, as you know, I'm part of the National College of Exercise Professionals, NCEP. We believe in the holistic fitness approach, holistic meaning whole. And to do that, we have the 5 components of fitness. One of them is nutrition. So eating right is going to make a big difference on how you look and feel. Another is attitude. How you're thinking is a huge part of that, being motivated to do your part, to work out, eat right. Another, of course, is cardiovascular training. You got to train your ticker, your heart. And to do that, you need to get moving. Good 10, 15 minutes of vigorous movement. Walking is okay, but if you can move faster, would be better. A little jog or using a machine, a rowing machine, bicycle, something like that, swimming. And then another is flexibility training, range of motion. And then, of course, the other one that I really encourage everybody out there who's thinking about starting an exercise program to think about this: weight training, resistance training. That is critical to long-term longevity, health, vitality, flexibility, actually, lifting weights. So for those of you who haven't been doing it, I encourage you to do it. If you need help, I highly recommend you talk to a professional in your community, a personal trainer, a fitness coach. Be sure to ask them about their credentials, make sure they're insured, and then get going. Work with somebody who knows what they're doing. It will help you more. It's like with a basketball player. You can go out and shoot hoops yourself, but if you work with a coach, you're probably going to get a little bit better each time.
Hey, thanks a lot, cousin Adam. James, you always are good. It's good to see you.